The auctioneer's voice echoed through the packed gallery. $3,600,000. Do I hear 3,000,007? A dozen paddles shot into the air. Camera flashes burst across the room. I couldn't breathe. The framed drawing on the easel wasn't large. It was a sheet of faded construction paper covered in bright crayon colors, uneven stick figures, and a crooked handwritten message at the bottom. Happy birthday, Grandma. Love, Lily. My 6-year-old daughter had made it at our kitchen table 8 years earlier. 3,800,000. Gasps rolled through the audience. Before I could process the number, my phone began vibrating nonstop. Mom. Again. And again. The instant I answered, she didn't even say hello. That money belongs to me, Margaret shouted. That drawing was my birthday present. You stole it, Cindy. I closed my eyes. No, Mom. Don't lie to me. I'm already on my way. Tell them to stop the auction right now. Around me, reporters were already gathering. Mrs. Bennett, where has this historic artwork been all these years? Did you know it would become valuable? Is it true there's a family ownership dispute? Before I answered a single question, I saw my mother's furious face pushing through the crowd toward the auction floor. She hadn't come because she loved the drawing. She had come because it was suddenly worth millions. And standing there beneath the bright gallery lights, I couldn't stop thinking about the day she'd looked straight into her 6-year-old granddaughter's hopeful eyes and thrown that same drawing into the trash. 8 years earlier, none of us had imagined that one cruel moment would follow us into this room. Mom's 61st birthday had been unusually extravagant. Every relative seemed determined to outdo the last with expensive handbags, jewelry, designer scarves, and gift certificates. The dining room table looked more like a luxury boutique than a family celebration. Lily had spent 2 days making her gift. She had refused my help, insisting, "Grandma has to know I made every part myself." When everyone finished opening their presents, Lily skipped across the room holding the drawing with both hands. Happy birthday, Grandma. My mother barely smiled. She glanced at the picture for no more than 3 seconds before her expression hardened. What is this supposed to be? Lily pointed excitedly. That's you, and that's me, and Mommy, we're holding hands. Several relatives smiled. Mom didn't. She held the paper between 2 fingers, as though it were something dirty. This is childish. The room fell silent. It's just a drawing. Lily's smile disappeared. Mom looked toward the expensive gifts covering the table. When people come to a birthday party, they should bring something with value, not, she laughed softly, this worthless little scribble. Then she dropped it into the kitchen trash can. No hesitation. No apology. Just like that. Lily stared at the garbage can without moving. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. Instead, I wrapped my arm around my daughter and quietly led her toward the front door. A few minutes later, while everyone gathered around the birthday cake, I slipped back into the kitchen, reached into the trash, unfolded the drawing, smoothed out its creases, and tucked it carefully inside my purse. I never told anyone. Not even Lily. As we drove home, she looked out the window and whispered, "Maybe Grandma didn't like my present." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You made it with love," I told her. "That's what matters." I believed that was the end of it. I was wrong. Now, 8 years later, my mother stormed into an international auction, demanding the sale be stopped. Security moved toward her. Lawyers stood. Reporters rushed closer. Just before anyone could speak, the man who had placed the highest bid slowly rose from his seat. He adjusted his jacket, looked directly at my mother, then turned toward the auctioneer. "Before anyone argues about ownership," he said calmly, "does everyone in this room actually know why I was willing to spend $3.8 million on that drawing?" The entire gallery went silent. The drive home from my mother's birthday party was painfully quiet. Usually, Lily filled every car ride with questions or songs she'd made up herself. That night, she sat in the backseat hugging her little backpack, staring out the window as streetlights slid across the glass. After several minutes, she spoke so softly I almost didn't hear her. "Mom." "Yes, sweetheart." She hesitated. Was my drawing really bad? The question hit harder than anything my mother had said. I looked at her in the rearview mirror. No. But Grandma said it was worthless. I pulled into an empty parking lot instead of driving home. Turning off the engine, I climbed into the backseat beside her. "Lily, do you know what makes art special?" She shook her head. "It's honest." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you drew exactly what was in your heart. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You made something because you loved Grandma enough to spend 2 whole days creating it." She looked down at her hands. "So, it's okay." I smiled. "It's more than okay." She leaned against me. I still wish she liked it. I kissed the top of her head. "I know." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I carefully unfolded the drawing from my purse. There were tiny wrinkles, where it had been crushed inside the trash can. I smoothed each crease with my fingertips before slipping it into a clear protective folder. Inside the same box were Lily's first baby shoes, hospital bracelet, birthday cards, and photographs from preschool. The drawing belonged there. Not because it was valuable, because it mattered. Life moved forward. Lily never stopped drawing. Every available surface seemed to become her canvas. Napkins, scrap paper, notebook margins, even grocery receipts. Sometimes I'd wake up to find new sketches taped to the refrigerator before sunrise. She wasn't copying cartoons like most children. She invented entire worlds. Animals wearing business suits. Cities floating among clouds. Families communicating through colors instead of words. Every drawing carried tiny details that made people stop and look twice. I simply thought my daughter had a vivid imagination. My mother disagreed. During family dinners, Margaret would sigh whenever Lily carried a sketchbook. "Still wasting paper." Lily quietly lowered the notebook. I answered before she could. "She's practicing." "For what?" my mother scoffed. "Artists don't pay bills." Lily stopped drawing whenever Grandma visited. The moment Margaret left, she'd quietly begin again. I noticed. So did someone else. Near the end of 2nd grade, Lily's art teacher, Mrs. Henderson, asked if I could stay after school for a few minutes. I expected a discussion about grades. Instead, she spread several drawings across her desk. "These are extraordinary." I laughed politely. She's always loved drawing. Mrs. Henderson shook her head. "No, Cindy, lots of children love drawing." She gently tapped one picture. "They don't usually understand visual balance like this." Then another. Or perspective. Another. Or emotional storytelling. I looked at the papers differently. For the first time, I wondered if I had been seeing only a little girl's hobby, while someone else saw genuine talent. Mrs. Henderson opened a folder. "Our district participates in a regional archive documenting exceptional young artists." I blinked. An archive. We photograph and preserve selected early works. Years from now, they become an educational record showing artistic development. She smiled warmly. "Would you allow Lily's work to be included?" I looked toward my daughter, who was coloring happily in the hallway without the slightest idea what we were discussing. "If it helps other children someday." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "It might help much more than that." I signed the permission forms without another thought. When I mentioned it during Sunday dinner, my mother laughed so loudly that everyone looked over. "They're archiving children's scribbles now." A few relatives chuckled awkwardly. Margaret took another sip of wine. I suppose museums are running out of real artists. Nobody answered. Lily quietly folded her sketchbook, closed beneath the table. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She gave me a small smile. Years passed. The little girl whose drawings had once been dismissed as worthless slowly became known in local exhibitions, then national competitions, then international galleries. Critics praised her originality. Collectors waited years for commissions. Interviews called her one of the most exciting young artists of her generation. Through all of it, the very first signed drawing remained untouched inside my closet. Sometimes I'd open the keepsake box just to look at it. Not because of its growing significance, because it reminded me of the promise I'd silently made that night. No one would ever make my daughter believe her gifts belonged in the trash again. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. "Mrs. Bennett," a calm voice asked. "This is Daniel Mercer from the Whitmore Gallery." I recognized the name immediately. One of the most respected galleries in the country. "Yes. I have an unusual question." I waited. "Do you still possess Lily Bennett's very first signed drawing?" My heart skipped. "As why?" There was a long pause. Then he lowered his voice. "If you still have it." Another pause. "Please don't let anyone else know until we've examined it." 2 days later, I carried the drawing into the Whitmore Gallery, inside the same plastic folder I had placed it in 8 years earlier. 3 experts waited beneath bright examination lamps. One photographed the faded paper. Another studied Lily's signature. The third compared the drawing with images from the regional school archive. For nearly an hour, nobody explained anything. Finally, Daniel Mercer removed his glasses. "This is authentic." I gripped the edge of the table. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means this is Lily Bennett's earliest surviving signed work." He pointed to the lower corner, where 6-year-old Lily had written her name in uneven purple letters. "The archive photographs prove it existed 8 years ago. The paper, pigments, creases, and signature all match." Then he looked directly at me. "Collectors have been searching for this piece." Within weeks, the drawing was announced as the centerpiece of a charity auction connected to Lily's latest international exhibition. The story spread quickly. A childhood gift once dismissed as worthless was now being described as an important piece of modern art history. That was when my mother changed her story. Margaret began calling relatives and claiming she had recognized Lily's talent from the beginning. "She made that drawing for me," she told them. "I was her first supporter." Soon, family members were posting old photographs and congratulating Margaret for inspiring Lily's career. Then my phone filled with messages. "Why are you selling Grandma's property? You should share the money. Your mother says you took the drawing without permission." I called Margaret immediately. "Stop telling people I stole it." Her voice remained calm. "You removed my birthday present from my house. You threw it into the trash." I was upset. "You called it worthless in front of Lily." "That doesn't mean I surrendered ownership." The following morning, a letter from her attorney arrived. Margaret was formally claiming the drawing and demanding the auction be suspended. At mediation, she sat across from me in a tailored cream suit, acting as though the past had been rewritten in her favor. "My granddaughter gave that artwork to me," she said. "Cindy had no right to take it." I looked toward the relatives she had brought as witnesses. "You all saw what happened." My aunt lowered her eyes. My cousin shifted in his chair. No one defended Margaret. Her attorney leaned forward. "Mrs. Bennett, are you admitting you removed the artwork?" "I removed it from a trash can after Margaret deliberately discarded it." Margaret's jaw tightened. "It was a temporary reaction. You walked away from it." "I never said anyone could take it." The dispute forced the gallery to delay the sale while legal documents were reviewed. Reporters gathered outside our home. Headlines questioned whether I had preserved Lily's first masterpiece or stolen a valuable family possession. Lily watched one report from the kitchen doorway before turning off the television. "I made that picture because I loved her," she whispered. "Now everyone is fighting over it." I took both her hands. "I'm not fighting for the money." "Then what are you fighting for?" "The truth." The auction was eventually allowed to proceed under legal supervision, with the proceeds held until ownership could be resolved. On the evening of the sale, Margaret entered the gallery surrounded by lawyers and relatives. She looked at the framed drawing, then at me. "When this is over," she said, "you'll regret embarrassing me." Before the bidding began, a distinguished man in the front row raised his hand. "I would like permission to address the room before placing my offer." The auctioneer hesitated, then nodded. The man stood, opened a leather folder, and placed several documents on the table in front of him. Every camera turned toward him. The room became so quiet that the faint hum of the gallery lights seemed deafening. The buyer stepped toward the front of the auction room, carrying a leather portfolio. "I appreciate everyone's patience," he said. "Before I complete a purchase of this significance, I want the provenance entered into the public record." He nodded toward the auctioneer. "May we display the supporting documents?" A large screen behind the stage lit up. The first image appeared. It was a high-resolution photograph of Lily's drawing, dated just 3 weeks after Margaret's birthday party. Below it appeared another. Then another. Daniel Mercer addressed the audience. "These images come from the Regional Gifted Youth Archive." The next document showed Mrs. Henderson's original submission forms. "My permission," I whispered. I had almost forgotten signing them. The curator nodded toward me. Mrs. Bennett unknowingly created the earliest documented preservation record. An expert stepped forward. "The folds visible here." He pointed toward the enlarged image. "Match the folds still present in the original drawing today." Another slide appeared. The wrinkles from being thrown into the trash. Every crease matched perfectly. The expert continued. "Those imperfections became identifying characteristics. They prove uninterrupted possession." My mother's attorney leaned toward her. She no longer looked confident. Still, Margaret stood. "This changes nothing." Every head turned toward her. "The drawing was mine before Cindy took it." One of the lawyers calmly replied. "The documentation demonstrates continuous custody after the item was discarded." Margaret folded her arms. "I never intended to abandon it." "No one can read intentions," the lawyer answered. "We can only evaluate actions." The atmosphere shifted. For the first time that evening, whispers spread through the audience. People weren't discussing money anymore. They were talking about a little girl whose birthday gift had nearly disappeared forever. The buyer stepped forward again. "My name is Jonathan Ellis." Several collectors in the audience immediately recognized him. He continued. "For 6 years, I've studied Lily Bennett's artistic development." A timeline appeared on the screen behind him. It displayed dozens of Lily's famous works in chronological order. Jonathan pointed toward the first drawing. "Every major artist has a moment when their visual language first appears." He moved his finger across the screen. The flowing lines. The unusual color relationships. The symbolic family composition. They all begin here. He turned toward the audience. "This isn't valuable because it was made by a child. It's valuable because this is the first documented appearance of the artistic style that would later redefine contemporary figurative art." Reporters began writing furiously. Collectors leaned forward. Even those who had never cared about the family dispute suddenly understood why the drawing mattered. It wasn't simply the first picture Lily had signed. It was the birth of an artistic voice. I looked over at Lily. Tears filled her eyes. "I almost lost it," she whispered. I reached for her hand. No. She looked at me. You almost lost faith because someone told you your gift didn't matter. I squeezed her fingers. The drawing was never the important part. What was? You. She wiped away a tear and smiled weakly. For the first time that day, I saw some of the tension leave her face. Across the room, several relatives who had spent weeks defending my mother quietly avoided eye contact. My aunt lowered her head. One cousin silently walked away from Margaret and joined the opposite side of the room. No one argued anymore. The evidence had spoken louder than anyone could. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Pending the final legal determination already under review, bidding may continue. Margaret looked around the room, expecting someone to support her. Nobody did. She took one slow step backward, then another. Jonathan Ellis remained standing. There is just one fact, he said, his voice calm but firm, that no one here has mentioned. He reached into his portfolio once more. I believe it's time everyone saw the final piece of evidence. Every camera in the gallery swung toward him as he lifted a sealed document into the air. Jonathan Ellis handed the sealed document to the auctioneer before turning to face the audience. This, he said, is the complete provenance report my team commissioned before I placed a single bid. The auctioneer broke the seal and passed copies to the legal representatives overseeing the sale. Jonathan continued. When you spend millions of dollars on a work of art, you don't rely on stories. You rely on evidence. The gallery screen illuminated once again. A timeline stretched across it. At the beginning was the date of Margaret's birthday. Beside it appeared witness statements from family members who had attended the celebration. The next entry showed photographs from the Regional Gifted Youth Archive. Then came preservation records, expert examinations, and every documented transfer of the drawing, all leading to the present day. There is no gap, Jonathan said. From the moment Cindy removed this drawing from the trash, its custody has been continuous. One of the attorneys stood. After reviewing the evidence, we find no legal basis for Mrs. Margaret Bennett's ownership claim. He closed the report. The drawing was intentionally discarded. Mrs. Cindy Bennett lawfully preserved it thereafter. The sale may proceed. Silence filled the room. Then the auctioneer smiled. The auction is officially concluded. A burst of applause swept through the gallery. Not for the record-breaking sale. For the truth. I looked toward my mother. She stood perfectly still. For the first time in my life, she had no argument left. No explanation. No one believed her version anymore. Then Lily quietly stepped beside me. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I never forgot that day. I turned toward her. I remember watching Grandma throw my picture away. Her eyes stayed on the framed drawing. I thought maybe she was right. I pulled her into my arms. No. She rested her head on my shoulder. You saved more than my drawing. I felt tears filling my own eyes. You saved me from believing I wasn't good enough. At that moment, every sleepless night, every difficult decision, every silent sacrifice became worth it. The drawing had never been about money. It had always been about protecting one little girl's confidence before the world had a chance to recognize her gift. Outside the gallery, reporters surrounded our family. One journalist asked the question everyone wanted answered. What will you do with the $3.8 million? Lily answered before I could. I'm keeping enough to continue creating art. She smiled. The rest will help children whose talents are ignored because they can't afford supplies, lessons, or encouragement. Within months, the Lily Bennett Foundation opened its doors. Children from every background filled bright studios with paint, charcoal, clay, and imagination. No child was turned away because of money. No child was told their creativity was worthless. I accepted a position on the foundation's board, making sure every young artist who walked through those doors felt seen, heard, and encouraged. Jonathan Ellis fulfilled another promise. Although he became the legal owner of the original drawing, he loaned it indefinitely to the foundation. It hung inside the entrance hall in a simple frame. Beneath it was a small plaque, the drawing that was saved. Visitors often stopped to admire it. Some expected a masterpiece worth millions. Instead, they found a child's imperfect birthday gift. Then they read the story beside it. They learned that the value of the drawing had never started with an auction. It started the moment one mother refused to let someone else's cruelty define her daughter's worth. As for Margaret, her lawsuit was formally dismissed. Relatives who had defended her apologized after reading the court findings and seeing the evidence for themselves. Family gatherings became smaller. Eventually, invitations stopped coming altogether. She had not only lost her claim to the money, she had lost the trust of the people she had spent years trying to control. One quiet afternoon, Lily and I visited the foundation after the children had gone home. Sunlight streamed through the windows, falling across the framed drawing. She smiled at it. I used to wish Grandma had kept it. I smiled back. I'm grateful she didn't. She looked at me, understanding exactly what I meant. Because if that drawing had stayed where it was never appreciated, the world might never have seen it. And as we walked out of the gallery together, I glanced once more at the empty space where it had rested in our home for 8 years and realized its greatest value had never been the $3.8 million. It was the moment a mother chose to save what everyone else had called worthless.